back with that special show. We're just going to start off straight from the top. I promised you that this was going to be a cultural year, and we're going to continue it. It's not always going to be about music. It's not always going to be about artists. It's not always going to be about me. Sometimes it's going to be about issues that we face as people. So I would like to do a show today talking about modern day slavery. I have a couple of videos for y'all to watch, and I also want to speak on what we watch in the video. So once again, LiveThatSINY, your host, Dreddz. Don't turn the channel. Director, hit me with that first video.
December 2016. A video is widely shared by Burundian social media accounts. It shows red liquid flowing from the gutter of a private property. Those who posted it speculated that the liquid might be blood. Some asked if the house was being used by Burundi's feared intelligence services. The government immediately denied that this house, or any other, had ever been used as a torture facility. BBC Africa Eye has been looking closely at this house and asking some critical questions. Who lived here? Did people die here? And is the Burundian government running secret torture facilities to silence dissent?
The reason why we're here is to protest this third mandate of the president.
The streets of the capital, Bujumbura, in 2015. Burundi is a tiny country in the Great Lakes region of Africa. It shot into the headlines when President Pierre Nkurunziza decided to run for a third term in office. People took to the streets, claiming he was violating the constitution. Peaceful protests soon turned violent. Hundreds were killed. These images were filmed when the BBC could still report freely on Burundi's troubles. But there was a brutal crackdown on local independent media. Foreign journalists were denied visas, and special instructions were left at a border post refusing entry to a BBC team. Faced with these restrictions, BBC Africa Eye decided to examine some of the social media images that have been trickling out of Burundi in recent years. The government likes to portray Burundi as a country now at peace. But these clips tell a different story. In this video, members of the Imbonerakure, the ruling party's youth wing, chant songs about rape. Here, supporters sing about burning opponents. Other posts show dead bodies floating in lakes and rivers. The video of the red liquid was among the most disturbing, and it contained some information that allowed us to investigate further. It was posted on social media with an address, 76 Avenue Ntwarante, It's here in Kinindo, a quiet residential neighborhood of Bujumbura. In April this year, we found the house's owner, Prosper Kaze. He's an active member of the opposition who no longer lives in Burundi, and he recognized his property in the video.
It's a place where I grew up, so I can't mistake it. Let's see. Not good at drawing, but just from memory, this is the sitting room. Yeah.
With Prosper's guidance and family photos, forensic architecture, who specialize in the precise reconstruction of witness testimony, built this virtual model of the house. It's the house Prosper grew up in, and to which he took his own children to spend time with their grandparents. His family left the country and abandoned the property in 2015, at the height of the protests. In November of that year, pictures showing what looked like the same house being raided by security forces emerged on social media. A journalist was also at the scene and gave us these images. They mapped perfectly onto the model. The security forces said they were reclaiming the property from rebels. Prosper's house was now in the hands of Burundi's authorities. But what did they do with it? And why, 1 year later, was red liquid flowing from its gutter? After months of searching, we tracked down a man who claimed to know the property and what happened here. We'll call him Nathan. He drew a sketch of it for us, which proved that he really was familiar with the layout of Prosper's house. Nathan says he worked as a guard for a man called Alexis Ndayikengurukiye, known as Nkoroka. This is Nkoroka. He is the deputy head of interior security for Burundi's intelligence service and is accused by local human rights activists of running secret detention centers across the country.
Normally, Nkoroka doesn't kill, but he orders. He tells you, work. You do what he orders you to do.
Okay. The door is here?
The door is there, leading to that room.
We took forensic architecture to meet Nathan. Using the model to walk through the house, Nathan gave a detailed account of what he had witnessed in each room.
How many people were in the house?
I don't remember the exact number, but in the detainees' room and in the other room, there were around 20 people. Nkoroka was the one in charge of the house, so sometimes he would get them out to interrogate them and beat them up in the living room. The detainees were made to lie down, and the chairs were on the other side. I can't tell if they were beaten one by one. All I know is that they were screaming.
We managed to find one of the men who entered that living room and faced Nkoroka's interrogation. We'll call him Pierre. Pierre was accused of involvement in the protests. He was tortured, but later escaped and fled the country.
When I was inside, I was like someone who was already dead. I did not think I would ever get out. Now that I am far away, I am starting to forget. But what keeps coming back to me are the screams that I heard over there.
Pierre's is the most detailed and shocking account of how Nkoroka allegedly dealt with those suspected of opposing the government.
If they wanted to question someone, they would call him and they would approach the chief and kneel before him. So we would be in line somewhere here and they would call us one by one. Each case was different. But if they were not satisfied with your answer, they would torture you. You would hand them your hands and they would beat them with electric cables. Also, they would cane you under their feet while kneeling. I recall one of the cables that had many wires inside with a black rubber cover. That was the one the chief used to walk around with. A black rubber cable enclosing many wires that he would beat you up with if he was not satisfied with your answer.
In December 2016, Pierre heard something worse than the regular beatings. 2 people, he said, tried to escape from the house, and the guards chased after them.
So we could hear people shouting and saying, "Get those dogs, don't let them escape, or you will suffer consequences." When they finally caught them, I could hear them screaming in a way that suggested that they were being killed or being inflicted excruciating pain. They did not come back in the house after, and given the words I could hear, I think they were killed.
It was not just the screaming that made Pierre think the detainees had been killed. He also says he heard the chief, Nkoroka, talking about body bags.
Then that day he said, "Bring sacks and stuff in those dogs and load them in the car." That is why I think people were killed there before, because those bags were used to carry corpses.
Pierre didn't see any of this. He was locked in a room, listening to the terrifying sound of men screaming outside. But at around the same time, just before the video of the red liquid began to circulate, our guard, Nathan, saw a killing with his own eyes. His account contains striking similarities to Pierre's testimony. He describes 3 men being brought into the house. They were tall, one of them especially big.
Let me tell you the truth, the whole truth. During the time of that blood, they had brought 3 men and had put them in that room over there. The next night, an intelligence agent came and took them out of their detention room to the living room. That was Nkoroka. He ordered his guard to behead them. At that point, one of the guys, who was a tough man, tried to forge ahead and escape.
According to Nathan, the escapee was caught and killed just inside the main gate. He says the guards carried the body back into the living room, where the other 2 prisoners had already been beheaded with knives.
Then they brought sacks to stuff their corpse in. We tied the sacks. Then we took a new tent and laid it in the cargo area of the car, loaded the corpses in the car, and covered them with a tent, and they drove.
Nathan says the bodies were carried away in sacks. But the blood of the 3 men remained on the floor and the driveway and had to be cleaned up.
If that blood was coming from the house, it was from the kids' bathroom.
Prosper, who built the sewage system for this house, says that if it had been poured into this bathroom drain, it would have flowed into this gutter, the same gutter seen in the video posted on December 28th. It is impossible to be 100% sure that this liquid is the blood of the 3 men Nathan described. But Nathan did confirm that Pierre, the prisoner who says he heard men being killed, was also held captive at 76 Avenue, Ntwarante, at the time of the alleged killings. We've been looking at this house in Burundi's capital, Bujumbura, and asking if it was used as a torture facility by the government. But what does it tell us about the bigger picture? To understand the origins of the current violence, we need to go back in time. Between 1993 and the early 2000s, there was a civil war in Burundi. The conflict pitted the Tutsi minority, who had held power for many years, against the Hutu majority. The war ended when Nelson Mandela brokered a peace deal, laying out the terms for a power-sharing agreement.
President Buyoya has had the courage and the vision. He has agreed that the new army should be created from 50% of the Hutus and 50% of the Tutsis.
The agreement also said that no president could hold power for more than 2 terms. It laid the foundations for a decade of peace and stability. But when Pierre Nkurunziza decided to run again, many said he was violating the peace deal, a charge the president has always denied. Thousands, both Hutu and Tutsi, took to the streets, and in response, the regime mobilized its security apparatus to suppress dissent. Today, some believe that those in charge are trying to turn the 2 ethnic groups against each other to deflect attention away from Nkurunziza's attempts to stay in power. We found a low-ranking intelligence agent who worked with the government until he fled the country in 2016. He admitted to killing people during the time of the protests and said that the crackdown was directed at areas heavily populated by Tutsis.
Not many Tutsis worked with us. We were almost all Hutus, and those we killed came from neighborhoods where there were very few Hutus. Before ordering us to kill, they told us, Tutsis do not want us to rule. But later on we came to realize that they had lied to us.
According to the former insiders we spoke with, the crackdown of 2015 has now turned into a quiet, orchestrated program to eliminate opposition. Prosper's house is not the only site that has reportedly been used as a secret detention center for political prisoners. At least 21 other torture locations have been reported by victims and intelligence agents to the UN, to the civil society organization Dondeza, and to the BBC in these areas of the country. Of these 21, we have been able to locate 8 sites in the capital with precision, including Muha Military Camp, the National Intelligence Agency headquarters, the basement of the ruling party headquarters, containers in the yard of the National Water and Electricity Providers building in Kigobe, and the headquarters of the police unit in charge of protecting the country's institutions. This is where former President Melchior Ndadaye was buried. There has been a police presence next to his tomb for years, but between September and November 2015, a new structure appeared, and our sources say it became a base for an anti-riot brigade. The troops are visible here. They were deployed to suppress the protests in 2015 and were accused of using the containers in the yard as detention and torture sites. A victim told us that he was interrogated in this pink house in the suburb of Mutakura in 2016. It's a former bakery, abandoned by its owner during the protests. The victim told the BBC that liquid was injected into his stomach. A former intelligence agent told the BBC that he saw people being killed in a bar called Iwabo Wabantu. It belonged to the now deceased head of intelligence, Adolf Nshimirimana. Our source told us the killers would blast loud music to cover the screams. Local human rights groups confirm that political violence is still happening. We've analyzed the reports coming out of Burundi. They indicate that although fewer deaths are reported, more and more people are going missing or being tortured, and that these incidents are now spread right across the country. We put the allegations contained in this film to the Burundian authorities and to Alexis Ndayikengurukiye Nkuroka directly. We have not received any formal response. President Pierre Nkurunziza and his government have always denied involvement in human rights violations. But several of the sources we spoke to, including former government insiders, believe that this alleged program of detention and torture has been approved at the highest levels.
This was organized in closed circles. This is a secret that was known by very high-ranking officials. What I'm telling you, the president knew because he was given reports.
We put these allegations to the president's office. We received no response. The protests of 2015 have disappeared from the streets of Bujumbura, as have the journalists who covered them. But it would be a mistake, says one former intelligence agent, to think that Burundi is now at peace.
Some people think that the country is safe now. I want to tell you this. This small respite is for them the best time to carry out the killings without anyone noticing it.
This is a man we will call Martin. He worked for the regime and fled the country in 2018 because he feared for his life.
Let me repeat this. They have long list of people to be killed. They have list of army elements, police officers and civil servants who are to be killed because they are believed to be dissident or people who are believed not to support the ruling party enough. They have changed their operating mode, the cars, the body bags, the tents, the agents that they use in their new system. At the moment, the country is silent, but people continue to die and there will be no one left.
By asking questions about what happened in this house, we have found disturbing evidence that Burundi's government is still eliminating opposition to its rule. Multiple witnesses have told us about a hidden but systematic program of torture and killing. Local dissidents have a name for this. They call it Kame Kame, one by one.
Welcome back. As you can see, that was a very serious video, and I want to give you a couple of seconds to soak that in a little bit. Let's just get back to the subject of today's show, which is modern slavery. Some people think slavery is just, the slavery they know. As you can see, there's many different forms. So I'm going to give you a little explanation of what is modern-day slavery. And modern-day slavery consists of sex trafficking, child sex trafficking, forced labor, bundled labor or debt bondage, domestic servitude, forced child labor, and or unlawful recruitment and use of child soldiers. So let me just give you a brief synopsis of each one, in case you don't know. Sex trafficking is when an adult engages in a commercial sex act, such as prostitution, as the result of force, threat of force, fraud, coercion, or any combination of such means. That person is a victim of trafficking. Under such circumstances, perpetrators involved in recruiting, harboring, enticing, transporting, providing, obtaining, patronizing, soliciting, and maintaining a person for that purpose are guilty of sex trafficking of an adult. Okay. Now, child sex trafficking. When a child under 18 years of age is recruited, enticed, harbored, transported, provided, obtained, patronized, solicited, or maintained to perform a commercial sex act, proving force, fraud, or coercion is not necessary for the offense to be prosecuted as human trafficking. There are no exceptions to this rule, no cultural or socio-economic rationalisms after the fact that children who are exploited in prostitution are trafficking victims. Now for forced labor, sometimes also referred to as labor trafficking, encompasses the range of activities recruiting, harboring, transporting, providing, or obtaining involved when a person uses force or physical threat, psychological coercion, abuse of legal process, deception, or other coercive means to compel someone to work. Once a person's labor is exploited by such means, the person's prior consent to work for an employee is legally irrelevant. The employer is a trafficker and the employee is a trafficked victim. Migrants are particularly vulnerable to this form of human trafficking, but individuals may also be forced into labor in their own countries. Female victims are forced or bonded labor, especially women and girls in domestic servitude, are often sexually abused and exploited as well. So now let's go into bonded labor or debt bondage. One form of coercion used by traffickers in both sex trafficking and forced labor is the imposition of bond or debt. Some workers inherit debt. For example, in South Asia, it is estimated that there are millions of trafficking victims working to pay off their ancestors' debt. Others fall victim to traffickers or recruiters who unlawfully exploit an initial debt assumed, wittingly or unwittingly, as a term of employment. Traffickers, labor agencies, recruiters, and employers in both country of origin and the destination country can contribute to debt bondage by charging workers recruitment fees and exorbitant interest rates, making it difficult, if not impossible, to pay off their debt. Domestic servitude, which is another form of modern-day slavery. Did you see that right there? All right, now. Okay, domestic servitude, involuntary domestic servitude, is a form of human trafficking found in distinct circumstances. Work in a private residence that creates unique vulnerabilities for victims. It is a crime in which a domestic worker is not free to leave his or her employment and is abused and underpaid, if paid at all. Many domestic workers who do not receive the basic benefits and protection commonly extended to the other groups of workers. Things as simple as a day off. Moreover, the ability to move freely is often limited, and the employment in private homes increases their isolation and vulnerability. Labor officials generally do not have the authority to inspect employment conditions in private homes. Domestic workers, especially women, confront various forms of abuse, harassment, and exploitation, including sex and gender-based violence. These issues taken together may be symptoms of a situation of domestic servitude. When the employer of a domestic worker has diplomatic status and enjoys immunity from civil and criminal jurisdiction, the vulnerability to domestic servitude is enhanced. So that makes it even worse when they're a diplomat or, somebody, a government official. Now let's get into the forced child labor. Although children may legally engage in certain forms of work, children can also be found in slavery or slavery-like situations. Some indicators of forced labor of a child include situations in which the child appears to be in the custody of a non-family member who requires the child to perform work that financially benefits someone outside the child's family and does not offer the child the option of leaving, such as forced begging. Anti-trafficking responses should supplement, not replace, traditional actions against child labor, such as remediation and education. When children are enslaved, their exploiters should not escape criminal punishment, something that occurs when government use administrative responses to address cases of forced child labor. And last but not least, let me just give you a little synopsis of unlawful recruitment and use of child soldiers, which you've seen a lot of in the video that we played. Child soldiering is a manifestation of human trafficking when it involves the unlawful recruitment or use of children through force, fraud, or coercion by armed forces or combatants or other forms of labor. Perpetrators may be government, armed forces, paramilitary organizations, or rebel groups. Many children are forcibly abducted to be used as combatants. Others are made to work as porters, cooks, guards, servants, messengers, or spies. Young girls may be forced to marry or be raped by the commanders and male combatants. Both male and female child soldiers are often sexually abused or exploited by armed groups, and such children are subject to the same types of devastating physical and psychological consequences associated with child sex trafficking. So that was just a little synopsis of the different forms. And let me give you some facts, 11 facts about modern day slavery, okay? Number one, it's not just sex. Forced labor is more rampant than sex trafficking. In fact, 65% of the world's slaves are in a forced labor situation. So, okay, it's not just sex trafficking and sex slaves. It seems like the majority rules with forced labor. So a lot of these people that you see out there and they're providing a service for you, some of them are a part of modern day slavery. So just be mindful of that when you're dealing with them or, you know, interacting with them. Number two, watch what you eat. 90% of companies ship shrimp to the U.S. use some type of bonded or forced labor to produce it. So all my seafood lovers, unless you're going out there catching shrimp yourself, you know what I'm saying? I guess 90% of the companies are using slaves. Number three, kids killing other kids. There are up to 200,000 children who are forced to be soldiers in the world today. That's something, you know, just touch the scale on. The video, touch the scale on it a lot. Look at the news. Do your research, like I always tell you. This is just to enlighten you, you know what I'm saying? You got to go out there and get your research done. Number four, the criminals, they're criminals, that's untaxed money, okay? Which is not a good thing to say. Traffickers make $150 billion in profits a year, okay? While the slave makes nothing and puts the majority of the work in. So you wouldn't want to be on that end of the totem pole. Number five, that was only 33 years ago. So chattel slavery didn't end until 1981. And that was in Mauritania, which was supposed to be the last country to outlaw it. But I'm talking about it today in 2019. So apparently it didn't end in 1981. It's still going on around us. Number six, is not always a stranger. According to the UN, 46% of the victims worldwide know their trafficker, okay? So be mindful of that. Be mindful of who your family and your children are around, okay? Be mindful of just doing your research. I know a lot of people find it easier to come into this country illegally, or, you know, going through a trafficker is easier to just pay, but, you know, the problems that you get behind it might be lifelong. Number seven, slaves have even less value today. The average cost of a slave today is $90, compared to that in 1809 when the average price was $40,000. So that speaks a lot in volumes, you know. It shows how much you're worth, and, you know, $90 for a human being, come on, okay. Number 8 is not just girls. 400,000 men and boys are being sexually exploited globally. We just had a story break today in Nigeria, I believe, where they found 1,000 young men chained and, you know, being forced in a house. Their parents thought they was in a religious school, and they're being put through slavery right now. Number 8, or I might got my numbers wrong, but y'all get me, okay? Governments do it too, which we are learning. 10% of those in forced labor are in state-imposed forms of forced labor prisons or work imposed by state military or armed forces. Wow, okay? And last but not least, 14 million, almost half of the world's slaves are found in India, which is surprising because, as you can see, that video was dealing with Africa, and a lot of times when people think about modern-day slavery, they just think it's happening in Africa, which is not. It happens in the U.S., it happens in India, and it happens everywhere, you know. So I hope those were some interesting facts, and I hope that was an interesting video to open your eyes and to get you to go out there and do your research and learn more. Now, I want to talk about a major issue that's going on in the United States right now concerning our president and concerning him being impeached. So I got another little video for you to watch, and then I'll be back to talk to you a little bit more about that.
Here in Washington, we are witnessing extraordinary scenes. That a potential impeachment of an American president is not something that politicians here take lightly, but they have decided to press ahead because they believe that there is enough evidence that Donald Trump abused his position as president for his own political gain. Now, the White House hoped that releasing that telephone call with President Zelensky of Ukraine would be enough to calm all this down. That has not worked, I should say, and there will be more evidence from the whistleblower report that kicked all this off being released later this week. As we speak, I should say, Donald Trump has met or is meeting with President Zelensky of Ukraine at the UN in New York. The Ukraine president quipped, "Better to be on TV than on the phone." That's what he's just told reporters. President Trump, of course, denies any impropriety. He has spent the day dismissing all this as a Democratic witch hunt. But enough of the Democrats, Jackie, have said that they are united in this call for impeachment, and they are determined this time to press ahead.
I'm announcing the House of Representatives moving forward with an official impeachment inquiry. The president must be held accountable. No one is above the law.
As the House Speaker, Nancy Pelosi, made him the 4th US president to face a formal impeachment inquiry, Donald Trump was in Trump Tower, tweeting, "Presidential harassment." By this morning, he was back at work, attending a meeting about Venezuela in New York.
It's the single greatest witch hunt in American history, probably in history, but in American history, it's a disgraceful thing.
The Democrats have been talking impeachment for months, but they've held off because taking the plunge is a huge political risk, especially ahead of an election year, and could play straight into President Trump's familiar victim of the establishment witch hunt narrative. But allegations he'd urged a foreign leader to go after his political rival Joe Biden and withheld aid money as leverage have tipped the Democrats over the edge.
The fact is that the President of the United States, in breach of his constitutional responsibilities, has asked a foreign government to help him in his political campaign at the expense of our national security. That cannot stand.
At the center of it all, Ukraine's Volodymyr Zelensky, seen here arriving at the UN this morning, an actor who played the president on television before remarkably becoming Ukraine's actual president this year. No one can pressure me because I'm the president of an independent country. Only one person can pressure me, my 6-year-old son. 1 week after Donald Trump froze nearly $400 million in military aid to Ukraine, President Zelensky took a call from President Trump on July the 25th. That led to a whistleblower complaint against the US president. During the conversation, Donald Trump raised unproven claims that Joe Biden tried to interfere with a Ukrainian prosecutor's investigation into a gas company that his son, Hunter Biden, was on the board of. In the last few hours, the White House released what it called an unredacted transcript of that call, but which was labelled a memorandum that was not a verbatim transcript of the discussion. "I would like you to do us a favour," the president said. Then later, "There's a lot of talk about Biden's son, that Biden stopped the prosecution, and a lot of people want to find out about that, so whatever you can do with the Attorney General would be great. Biden went around bragging that he stopped the prosecution, so if you can look into it, it sounds horrible to me." The summary doesn't include President Trump explicitly promising to release aid money in return for an investigation into the Bidens.
In this transcript, there is no quid pro quo, there is no improper leverage, and the overall tone of this transcript is that it is mutually laudatory.
It's just breathtaking. The idea that anybody in this building is somehow able to rationalize this or to somehow look the other way or try to minimize it is just breathtaking.
Now the House Judiciary Committee will decide if there's enough evidence to draw up so-called articles of impeachment. Then, if a simple majority in the Democrat-controlled House voted for President Trump to be impeached, the next stage would be in the Republican-controlled Senate, where a trial would be held, presided over by the Supreme Court Chief Justice. And if 2/3 of senators acting as a jury found the president guilty, he'd be removed from office. Then, say hello to President Mike Pence. Andrew Johnson was the first US president to be impeached in 1868, but the Senate didn't convict him.
Clinton is impeached for high crimes.
It was the same
and
for Bill Clinton in 1998, impeached by the House but acquitted by the Senate, and Richard Nixon resigned before it got that far. Removal from office has never happened, and with a Republican-controlled Senate, it's highly unlikely to with Donald Trump. But there's plenty of damage to be done.
It's not one smoking gun. You got 20 smoking guns. This is smoking artillery that's going on right now. Believe me, this is a fight to the death. Both sides will be dug in, completely polarized. It's going to be a very ugly election season, but it's going to be about this.
For the Democrats, it is a huge risk, but however slim the odds of success, enough of them now believe they have no choice but to try.
Siobhan Kennedy there. Well, earlier I spoke to the Democratic Congresswoman, Rashida Tlaib, who's been the target of President Trump's criticism. I started by asking her why the Democrats who have held off before think now is a good time to start an impeachment inquiry.
Well, I think many of my colleagues, they weren't trying to impeach him, they were trying to hold him accountable, trying to get his administration to comply with congressional subpoenas. Many of us, including myself from day one, have been concerned about him violating the United States Constitution that requires sitting presidents that take the oath of office to divest in their businesses so that we can take out any kind of, pay-to-play activity that corrupts our democracy out of play when he makes decisions that should be on behalf of the American people, not behalf of the best interests of his companies. Now, is this fear that we have allowed him to continue to be so lawless that he actually committed extortion and asked the country of Ukraine to help him in a personal matter that, to me, I think very much puts our national security at stake.
There's no evidence in the notes which have been released of the president offering any sort of quid pro quo to his Ukrainian counterpart.
Oh, I don't know. I don't know if where I grew up, it sounded very much like a mob scene. Congratulations. I want to help you, but you got to help me. I have a favor. I'm going to have you have my personal lawyer call you. Oh, I'm so glad that my personal lawyer contacted your assistant already. And, hey, by the way, I'm really disappointed that they weren't able to prosecute, I think Vice President Biden's son. I mean, there's a lot of, to me, collusion there. There's a lot of cover-up there. for sure, we all know that this was just a summary. This was not a complete transcript.
You all know it's a very long stretch, isn't it, from your analysis of this being a recreation of some sort of mob scene and being able to impeach the President of the United States of America. This is a very risky strategy for the Democrats, isn't it?
Oh, I don't know. So for me, it's not a strategy. I'm an American that has seen this president violate the United States Constitution by taking money and how military planes to land near airports so that his hotels can profit off of it. So for you all, it might be this phone call. For many of us in the United States Congress, it's been a number of issues. The fact that we've held 3 members of his cabinet in contempt, the fact that he has continued to not divest, although 44 presidents before him divested in all of their businesses, including President Carter selling his farm before he took the oath of office. You understand we have a crooked CEO running the United States government.
There were a swirl of allegations, similar criticisms made of President Trump around the very lengthy Mueller inquiry. In his view, he walked away unscathed from that. There is a danger he will do the same with this, and that is very damaging for you and the Democrats, isn't it?
This is not about political strategy and risk. You know what the risk for me and my residents who have been at the forefront in saying we need to impeach this president because he is not above the law is the fact that we're going to look away. That is, to me, more risky and dangerous if we're looking away and not allowing a sitting CEO run the government of the United States.
You say this is about your country. You will also be aware there will be many people who say this is a personal vendetta. You've made it clear since you first became elected you're going nowhere until you impeach President
But the facts, of course, Jackie. I mean, there are so many layers here that I think people around the world don't understand, but maybe they've already seen it. I mean, people know there's an upgraded version of pay to play right now, that if you want anything from Donald J. Trump, then go stay at his hotel, spend money at his resorts. The fact that he's even having military planes land near airports so that his failed business is able to make some sort of profit on a taxpayer dollars, that alone is an impeachable offense. This is, of course, probably the most corrupt president that we've ever had in the history of the United States, and this is just what we know publicly.
Very briefly, there are Democratic strategists who say this is playing entirely into the hands of President Trump.
I am a public servant. I'm not a political strategist, nor do I want to sit there and put my party before my country. Nor do I want to say that this is somehow not abided by the polls. If I listened to polls, Jackie, I would have never ran for the United States Congress because people said I couldn't win, and I did. So I'm going to outwork the hate. I'm going to push back against false lies and theories and push the truth.
Rashida Tlaib, thank you so much for talking to us today.
I mean, it's really too much I shouldn't have to say. That I had to come out there, like they really totally broke down everything that, I had on my palette to say, actually. But if you wasn't paying attention, let's just go over, what's going on with Trump. Okay, why is he facing impeachment inquiry and why it looks like he's in trouble, okay? The key accusation is that Trump put pressure on a foreign government to dish up dirt on one of the leading Democratic candidates to challenge him in next year's presidential election, the former Vice President, Joe Biden. Which is very ironic because if anybody remembers the last election, it was Hillary Clinton that he was doing that too, and it was the whole Facebook scandal and, the breach of security. So when they said he's the most corrupted president we had ever, okay, that's an understatement right there, okay. This year, we got a very big election, and I want to see how many people is going to come out there and let their voice be heard and let their vote count, please, excuse me. But it's a serious situation. That video is just to whet your palate and give you something to go research on. Everything I do on here is for you to research on. I want to thank you very much for allowing me to have these shows. This show is concerning modern-day slavery, and I wanted to bring in the Trump part because as Americans, this is what we're facing. He has violated every constitutional right that we have. You have seen a lot of, unnatural stuff just became natural stuff that's just happening that would never happen before. Disrespect, okay, in every form of society, every aspect, in the workplace, in the hospitals, everywhere in the families, in the prisons, okay? Where his modern day slavery comes in is these detention centers, okay? They don't have to say slaves. They can say detainees these days. They don't have to say plantations, okay? A lot of people don't like the word plantation, but they like the word detention, okay? What do you think a detention center is? What do you think these people are facing over there, okay? Let's be real with it. We got serious crimes and stuff going on. I'm pretty sure that a lot of, because it's illegal to call somebody a legal immigrant now, so don't call them that anymore. But I'm pretty sure we have a lot of troublesome ones here. Deal with the troublesome ones. All of them are not troublesome. So everybody shouldn't fall in that ice bracket where everybody's being harassed, That's the kind of confusion that's being stirred up, okay? Open your eyes, people. Not only do it take shows like this, it take y'all to make an impact. It take y'all to go out there and speak your minds, speak your voices, okay? Come out. Like I said, come out and vote. You'd be surprised how far that vote counts. It's very ignorant when you hear people say, I don't vote. That's the most important right that you have in this country. The most important, okay? And parents, you have to teach your children, okay, to follow suit, okay? I got numerous kids that are of age to vote right now. And I had to put in their cards and make sure, they were registered to vote. Even my 17-year-old, he won't be 18 till next month. I register him to vote. I register him to work the election. That's how important it is to me. I'm the Democratic table inspector, okay? Living out here, let me just tell you a story about a couple of weeks ago. I went into a check cashing place with my Board of Election check, okay? And the guy cashed the check for me, but then he asked me, what was the check for? I said, well, I'm a poll worker. I'm the Democratic table inspector. And you know what this gentleman told me? What he told me exactly was, if he would have known that before he cashed my check, okay, he wouldn't have cashed it. So this is the type of world we live in, okay? I'm from Brooklyn. There's no such thing as a Democratic, a Republican, or anything in Brooklyn. When one neighbor has a problem, okay, everybody comes together to fix that problem. So we're gonna have to change all of this politicizing racial unjust, okay? It's not about that. We're all here together. The whole Staten Island is the whole Staten Island, okay? On other notes, okay, look forward to upcoming shows that I got. Look forward to the shows that's playing now. I just did a couple of great shows. I got a new show coming up next week that I'm going to surprise you with, as you can see. I changed my background again. This is a new season, okay? We're doing it. Been doing this 5 years now. This is my 6th series, and we're going to continue till we get to 10, 15, 20. I want to shout out my director, A.E. Stand Back, okay? Hands up in the air, Cool Spot. Cool Spot always got a home here just as well as I got a home at Cool Spot all times. You know what I'm saying? So don't ever think that it's beef between me or any of these producers up in here. It's all family, it's all love. Sometimes we don't get along. Oh, well, that's how families do. You know what I'm saying? Don't take it too serious. Just come support us, watch our shows. And if you got any topics you want to hear me talk about, I told you this is a groundbreaking season for me, going into another season. And I want to talk about everything. I want to talk about what's on your mind and what's affecting y'all and what should be the daily topic, okay? I'm not always going to bring in an artist. This is a special. I had an artist that was supposed to come here. Unfortunately, he's not here, but the show must go on. I'm here. You're here. I thank you for that. LiveThatSINY. Hey, can I get my theme song one time, AE? Let me just do a little bounce to my theme song one time. All right. So until he find that theme song, because we're going to celebrate. Hey, 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 hey. Hey, thought we was done, right? Ha ha ha, surprise, surprise, we back. Let me shout out to my family, let me shout out to my kids, my children, let me shout out to the CTV family, shout out to my Brooklyn family, shout out to my SINY family, shout out to my Staten Island family. Anybody I forget, you know what I'm saying, please forgive me. Let's do another 5-6 years. Let's do another 60 years. Let's do it big right now. Hey.